So China in the last 2.5 decades has really increased its footprint in Africa. They are present in almost each and every country. They've been building infrastructure left, right, and center, and building dams. They've been building roads. They've been building ports. In terms of bilateral debt that the African countries face, China is their largest lender, so which is unsustainable for them.
President Donald Trump spoke about how Africa is a region that he doesn't want to focus in terms of business because he doesn't see any prospect in that area.
Given the factor that both African countries and India are interested in increasing their maritime cooperation.
India has a good collaboration with the African unions because we share the IUR, Indian Ocean region.
Problems with the maritime trade in that part of the world. So Indian Navy has been present there, and they have been there because of the African countries were interested in India's support.
So from this, we would like to transition into some positive.
See, the African countries are rich in all kinds of resources. Most of these minerals are present where? Present in Africa. So even in terms their potential for developing solar energy is immense. That's why there is a big plan within the African countries to develop solar energy, and India is also helping a lot of African countries. And unfortunately, it's a devastating war because the air force is being used, land systems are being used, the people are being terrorized.
Africa stands at a pivotal crossroads, balancing its rich resources and strategic significance amidst intensifying global competition. While China's economic footprint in Africa has expanded rapidly, India's approach emphasizes sustainable development, capacity building, and people-centric diplomacy. Ruchita Berry, a senior fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation, has extensively researched sub-Saharan Africa's and India's evolving role in the continent. Her work critically examines the implication of China's growing influence and India's strategic response, including initiatives like the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor and joint naval exercises aimed at enhancing maritime security. In this conversation, we'll delve into the complexities of Africa-India relations, the impact of China's presence in Africa, and India's strategies to strengthen its ties with this continent. Let's dive into the conversation and gain insights into India's strategic engagement in Africa. So, without further ado, let's get started.
Ma'am, welcome again on Dive a Publisher. Always an honor to have you and looking forward for a conversation today.
Thank you for inviting me for this very interesting conversation that you have.
Today's conversation is going to be about your favorite subject, that is Africa, and India's relationship with Africa. Your book is based on that as well, which spoke about building synergies in peace, security, and development. But to start our conversation, I want to bring to your notice the most important man in the world's comment on Africa, Mr. Donald Trump. President Donald Trump spoke about how Africa is a region that he doesn't want to focus in terms of business because he doesn't see any prospect in that area. Do you agree? There's no prospect in the region of Africa?
I don't think so. I do not agree with what Mr. Trump says, especially on Africa. He's done a lot of damage to Africa with all his new policies. He has introduced reciprocal tariffs to African countries from 15 to 50%, 50% to a country as small as Lesotho, and ended the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is the one way of the African countries accessing the US market. So one damage that he's done to Africa is that. And the second, that he's ended the US aid, which was a substantial support to the less developed countries, developing countries in Africa. So the Africans are really feeling pretty troubled with Mr. Trump's policies, and but they don't care about his viewpoint. That if he doesn't think that Africa is not an important region, that's his view. But the world does not feel that way. India at least does not feel that way. For India, Africa is important. Africa as a continent, African countries, all of them, 54 of them, are important strategic partners for India. The last India Africa Forum Summit, at the end of it, the the last statement said the proposal for India Africa partnership, strategic partnership. That's what it was. So for India, Africa is a very important partner. Africa is a region which is uh, within India's maritime neighborhood. They are
Yes.
our maritime neighbors across the Indian Ocean. So for India, Africa is important.
We will dive into India's role in Africa. Before I want to understand from you, from one country that sees no prospect to another country which is highly betting on the region, that is China. They are creating a lot of infrastructure, ports, railways in Africa and different countries. What do you think their outlook is when it comes to Africa?
So China in the last 2.5 decades has really increased its footprint in Africa. They are present in almost each and every country in Africa, from Cape Town down south to Cairo in the north. So they are present in each country. They are present in terms of economic presence. They are also there in the political the sphere, in trying to engage with all these countries in a big way. They have developed various forums for interactions with the African countries. First is the forum for China Africa cooperation, the FOCAC. They meet every 4 years, and in which they have been offering a lot of development assistance to the African countries, and they've been building infrastructure left, right, and center in Africa. They've been building dams, they've been building roads,
Roads.
they've been building ports in various parts of African continent, and they've got this what is known as the stadium diplomacy also. So where they build stadiums all across, I think more than 40 countries. They've built stadiums to encourage the young Africans
Sports.
to be involved in sports. So that's the kind of soft power that they are using, and they've set up their institutes where they teach their language. Mandarin is taught across the African continent. So for them, Africa is important, and it's not just that; it's also in terms of security. Africa was the region where they opened up the first, you base. It was in Djibouti in 2017 that they did that.
They
So
recognize the importance of Djibouti
they
earlier.
they they recognize the importance of Djibouti. They recognize the importance of Africa. So they are there. They are the largest trading partner now of Africa.
How
So
integral is Africa for the Belt and Road Initiative for them, ma'am?
Africa is a very important part of it. Several African countries are aligned to China in terms of the Belt and Road Initiative. All these infrastructure projects are coming up in Africa, um, are part of the Belt and Road Initiative. But there is a flip side of this also, because due to all these infrastructure projects, the loans that the Chinese have given to the African countries, this has added to the debt burden of the African countries, in terms of the bilateral debt that the African countries face. China is their largest bilateral lender at the moment, and they have the substantial debt from the Chinese, so which is unsustainable for them. So
This is a tactic that we see often when it comes to China creating its influence in different regions. That they try to create these debt traps and try to get these infrastructure that they're building in collaboration into their own hands, and that comes with a lot of power also.
yeah, so they are influencing these countries. They are moving through the economic route and influencing the political elites in these countries, and then if it's not sustainable, then the Humban Tota model of Sri Lanka is always there, that you take over the assets, the national assets. So that's worrisome. So that's why African countries are also diversified. They are not really looking at one economic or political partner. They are welcoming other partners also.
So you're saying the Africa and the Africa Union as a whole understands this psyche of China, and they try to counter it, or
No, see, they are welcoming China because China also delivers. They are delivering. Unlike the traditional partners, they like the US or the European countries. They if they promise
they
that
have
they will
that
deliver,
financial
and
muscle, right?
yeah, so they are delivering, say, the roads. Whether these roads are of the same quality as they are built everywhere else within China or in Europe or other places remains to be seen, because some of their development projects have not been that good. They've really crumbled in a few years. So there have been problems with China's development assistance also. That is something that you have to. But the African countries uh, have, there are two narratives that come when talk about China and Africa. There's one which says that Africa is really grateful that China is there, and that they are helping them out in this period when they are really need of assistance, and they have delivered whatever they want. But there is another, because which says that China is really endangering the Africans.
Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a quick moment and ask for a favor. We noticed that 93% of you who watch our content regularly aren't subscribed yet. My promise to you is simple. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll keep working hard to bring thought provoking conversations, incredible guests, and the topics you really care about the most. It is practically free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us, helping us grow, reach more people, and bring even better content your way. Thank you for supporting. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video.
They are increasing the debt of the African countries. So there are two narratives. One which is good about Chinese presence in Africa, and the other which feels that China is not really that helpful a partner.
What I've understood is when we see China versus India influence in this region, is that China has a very state-driven kind of approach to this region, and India has a people-centric and like a very soft power kind of approach. Do you think it's the right thinking from me?
Traditionally, India has looked at training and human resource development as one of the important pillars of India's cooperation. So, for India, providing knowledge or supporting the African desire for higher education or knowledge was something which was very important, because that fit in with India's own developmental experience. And in the last 10 years, you've seen that Prime Minister Modi was the first Prime Minister of India who came up with a policy plan. He came up with 10 principles of India Africa engagement, and he announced them when he visited Uganda in 2018. He announced them at the Ugandan parliament. And these principles, the most important one of these two, I'll just talk about two of them. The first says that for India, Africa is of high priority in its foreign and economic policy. Second, for India, the African priority is what guides its development cooperation with Africa. It's the African priority which is leading its engagement with the African countries. So we are not driven by our own interests, or
Interest.
we are driven by the what interests the African countries.
So we have a lot of we focus on the development partnership, like you said, skill building, capacity enhancement. We provide lines of credit, we concessional loans, and a lot of technical assistance as well. Healthcare is another area. Education, you mentioned. We have an IIT set up in Zanzibar. So this approach is more sustainable for the region because it's more self-centric, like what China uh,
Yeah, and it's
tries to
not a
do.
donor-client relationship. That is something that you. It's different. We are what we are doing is building a partnership in real sense. We are saying that, and we are equal partners. You know, we don't consider African countries as junior partners. We consider them as equal. So, and that's the main difference, that we are ready to partner with African countries in whatever area, whether it's health, whether it's higher education, whether it's defense. I recently, Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh was in Morocco. And why did he go there? He went there to inaugurate India's first armament factory in Morocco, which Tata has set up there. And this is going to develop, armored vehicles in Morocco, and this is in partnership with the Moroccans. Moroccans were the ones who came up with this idea that okay, Indian companies should come and set up, because there's a great demand for that over there. Otherwise, this wouldn't have set up. So we are helping the African countries in their industrialization process, because that's what they want. They don't want that India or any other external powers should just take import raw materials and give them back finished goods. They want to enhance the manufacturing and industrialization within Africa. So if India is talking about make in India, African countries are also talking about make in Africa.
Like you mentioned, that India is doing a lot of different efforts to act like a strategic partner for Africa and the African Union. We also have PM Modi visiting Ghana for the first time in 3 decades. Any Indian PM had visited Ghana, and there was a lot of significance of this visit as well, especially after him announcing that the connection with Africa is going to increase now, because there'll be 18 odd more consulates, uh,
Embassies.
embassies in this region from India.
Yeah, so India has increased its diplomatic footprint in Africa. So they have announced that they have set up more embassies, Indian missions in Africa, in various parts of Africa. So 18 more missions have been set up or are in the process of being setting up. And so this shows that India is interested in building greater ties with African countries. That India considers African countries as an important partners. It is interested in supporting their views at the multilateral sphere. So if you remember, when India hosted the G20 summit
Hmm.
in India, when India was uh, under its presidency in 2023, what did India do? That India brought in African Union as one of the members of the G20. That was
Big
a
move.
game changer.
Yeah. So another area that India has a good collaboration with the African Union, especially East Africa, is our maritime, because we share the IUR Indian Ocean region with this region as well. So if you want to speak a little bit about the our maritime partnership with Africa.
Yeah, so India and Africa share the waters of the Indian Ocean. And for India, Africa is not a stranger. African countries are not a stranger, because there has been maritime. So now what has happened is that in the last 2 decades, this has really increased a lot. It began earlier on. We used to have port visits by the Indian naval ships to various African countries. That used to be a regular. That's been going on for a very long time, for decades. But the game changer was when the piracy began off Somalia
Somalia.
in 2008. Since 2008, Indian Navy has been present in the Gulf of Aden, you know, protecting uh, the,
Trade
the
vessels.
the the corridor, the maritime corridor over there against the threat of piracy. So the pirates were very active from 2008 to 2012, but with the combined efforts of the multinational task force over there, and including Indian Navy, the piracy went down. But they have researched in the last 1.5 years or so, the piracy is back. And then there were also the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea region, which led to the, you know, delay. There has been problems with the maritime trade in that part of the world. So, Indian Navy has been present there, and they have been there because of the African countries were interested in in India's support in that sphere, dealing with piracy. And it's not just in the Gulf of Aden. Mozambique Channel also faced that, down south in southern Africa, the Mozambique Channel, that area also faced piracy. So piracy is one. Then illegal fishing is another common challenge that India and the African countries face, and for that also they needed more presence of India to support the African countries. And drug trafficking. There has been a huge amount of drug trafficking which is happening across the Indian Ocean region, from the Afghan Pakistan region to the African countries, whether it is Mozambique or Tanzania, where heroin from Afghanistan, Pakistan region has been landing, or in South Africa and Mozambique again. They've been there have been various kinds of narcotics which have become, which has trafficking, which has led to these two countries also becoming a transit point for these. So these common challenges have led to an increase in maritime cooperation between the two regions, and also the fact that there has been an increase in extreme events. There has been a lot of natural and humanitarian disasters occurring. So India has been a first responder to us, most of these countries in the Indian Ocean region, or the Indian Ocean littoral countries. Whenever there has been a cyclone or a flood, Indian navies have always been there. During COVID also, Indian Navy was there in terms of providing support, medical help to these countries. So that's been one of the reasons. So given this factor, given the factor that both African countries and India are interested in increasing their maritime cooperation, because if we say that India is a peninsula, it has number of coastal states. Similarly, with Africa, 34 countries in Africa have coastlines. So they are definitely interested in maritime cooperation. African Union has developed a maritime strategy. So, and which definitely there are strands in it which fit in with India's uh, own policy projections on maritime cooperation. So therefore, maritime cooperation is increasing. One example of that is the 10 African country maritime multinational maritime exercise, which happened in April earlier this year, in of Tanzania. So Indian Navy and India and Tanzania uh, together hosted this maritime exercise. It's called the Ekamye. That means one, that we are together. Otherwise, it's Africa India naval
Key maritime
key maritime
engagement.
engagement. But the idea is that we are one, we are together in this. So if we face similar challenges, we should work together in trying to deal with this.
There's also initiatives like Sagar and Mahasagar, which
Yeah, so when Prime Minister Modi visited Mauritius for the first time in 2015, that's when he launched the Sagar initiative. And this year, on the 10th anniversary of Sagar, he was in Mauritius again at their National Day, and where he announced the Mahasagar initiative, which is Saga 2.0, where he says that we have to look at mutual and holistic developments in all regions, not just Indian Ocean region, but in the global South as a whole. That India should cooperate with not just the region, the countries in the Indian Ocean region, help them not only become more secure, but also help them in their economic growth also. The focus is that for India, economic growth and development and security go hand in hand. India feels that a country can be secure only if it's developed, or vice versa. That we cannot uh, engage with a country where one side is lacking. So we need to have a comprehensive engagement, which would lead to a common growth for both India and the African
Since you
countries.
mentioned Mauritius, PM Modi also said that we are not just a strategic partner, but we are like a extended family.
Yeah, that's very interesting because when the Prime Minister of Mauritius was visiting Varanasi only a few weeks back, he welcomed Prime Minister Ram Ghulam, and he said that for India, Mauritius is not just a partner; it's family, and that's the view Prime Minister Modi has for the larger global South. Because if you remember, when India hosted, again, I'm giving the example of G20, the India's motto was one world, one family, and one vision. So that for India, the larger global South is part of family. So therefore, for India, uh, we are interested in not just partnering with them, with the countries in Africa, but also bringing to them all the benefits of being a family member.
We see a lot of conflicts in the region as well. You want to briefly speak about some conflicts and the underlying reason for these conflicts as well.
Yeah, so you find that Africa, while there are a lot of good things happening in Africa, you find that out of the 10 fastest developing countries in the world today, which IMF list each year, 5 of them are from Africa. So there is a lot of positive things happening in Africa, but unfortunately, conflicts are also continuing. There are whether it's uh, you know uh, traditional conflicts, or there is an increase in violent activity like that of terrorist activity. So from if you talk of terrorism, if you look at West Africa, we begin with Nigeria. It's Boko Haram has been active for a long time, while the Nigerian are doing their best to end the havoc that the Boko Haram terror group is doing, or the its splinter group, the ISIS of West Africa province. They're still continuing to, terrorize the civilians. Similarly, the Sahel has become the hotspot in terrorism. It's a global hotspot now, not just the African hotspot. It's a global hotspot in terrorism, and whether it's the ISIS affiliated terror groups or Al Qaeda affiliated terror groups, they're all there, and they're creating problems for countries like Mali, Burkina Faso. They've also there's a new trend that they were initially in the landlocked country, but they're now also moving into the coastal African states like Ivory Coast and others. So the terrorists are expanding their presence in the Sahelian region, and this is also the time where there are geopolitical tensions within the region. There is a shift happening within Sahel in terms of the presence of the traditional powers, because Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso, they don't want the French there. So they kicked out the French government, French troops from their country. They ended their military cooperation with France.
Instead, brought Russia.
Yeah, and then they brought Russia in. They brought the Wagner Group, or what's it's called as Africa Corps at the moment. They brought them in. They said we don't want that. The main problem was, they said that despite France's presence there, they were there since 2013 when in Mali, when the terrorists came in a big way, and the problems were not solved. The country's security issues are still the same. So they said that we don't want you anymore, France. Please go home.
Yeah.
So go back, and they want their own sovereignty. If you listen to either the President Traore of Burkina Faso, he is high on sovereignty, the African sovereignty. You listen to the Senegalese president, he also talks of sovereignty, that we do not want to be dictated by the terms of any of our external partners. We want to do what we want is the best for our interests. So there is a shift in the relationship with the external powers, and that's impacting on the larger regional relationships. The other conflict that is happening is in Sudan. The Sudan is one country where there's a civil war going on with two parties within the country, the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support group, which is basically a fight for the throne. Who's going to rule the country? That's what's happening, and unfortunately, it's a devastating war because it's a war where all kinds of large air forces being used, land systems are being used, the people are being terrorized. This led to massive uh, people moving out of the country and destabilizing the entire neighborhood. It's really worrisome what's happening in Sudan, and and then if you move east to the eastern side, you have Horn of Africa, where Somalia again, you have terror group the Al Shabaab, pretty active even now. Despite the fact that there is an African Union force there, which has been there for a long time, trying to deal with these terrorists. These terrorists are not only terrorizing the Somalis, they're also terrorizing neighboring countries like Kenya. So that's one problem which is not going. And the US has been there. We were talking about US. US has been helping Somalia over there in terms of air raids against these terror groups. And why is the US there? Because uh, if you believe what is going around is that the so-called you can say undeclared head of ISIS is present in Somalia. So that's the reason why US was very much interested in Somalia, because they want this leadership to end. That's one of the reasons, and it's not just in Eastern or in Horn of Africa that you have problems. You have problems in Central Africa. You have a country like Democratic Republic of Congo, which has been at war for decades now. The first UN mission in Africa was in Congo, and that was in 60s, and we are in 2025 now.
Still there's a
Even then,
conflict.
even now, there is a conflict going on. So there are conflicts all across Africa in some pockets. In Mozambique, in northern Mozambique, Cabo Delgado region, again there are terror groups which are pretty active there. So
Most of it is like civil wars, like.
so some of them are civil wars, but in some, you can say that in Democratic Republic of Congo, what is happening could be termed as a civil war. In Sudan, it's a civil war.
Civil war, yeah.
But in Mozambique, it's terror groups which are terrorizing the neighborhood. In Nigeria, it's the terror groups.
So from this, we would like to transition into some positive of this region, which is its energy dynamics. We know that Africa is rich in renewable resources such as solar, wind, geothermal, hydropower. Countries like Kenya have rich geothermal energy, as well as Morocco, which has massive solar farms. Do you see that Africa is leapfrogging directly into green energy, skipping the heavy fossil fuel dependence and just thinking about the future, which is more green?
See, the African countries are rich in all kinds of resources. They are rich in hydrocarbons. So there was a time when countries like US were importing a lot of their energy, uh, crude oil from Africa, from Nigeria. Uh, the the British companies have invested in a big way in the Nigerian oil because it's one of the biggest oil producers in Africa. So there was a saying which said that Shell is Nigeria and Nigeria is Shell. That's the kind of influence that these independent oil pro- companies had on the African oil market. So Africa, what I'm trying to say is that there are quite a few countries in Africa, whether you take Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, Egypt, and Mozambique, which is rich in, which has a huge reserves of natural gas, and others which I talked earlier are rich in are oil producers. So they had the traditional hydrocarbons. But the it is Africa is within the tropical zone, so they have the presence of sun all over, maximum time. So even in terms their potential for developing solar energy is immense. That's why there is a big plan within the African countries to develop solar energy, and India is also helping a lot of African countries towards that direction. Because if you remember, India was responsible for this whole initiative of solar developing the Solar Alliance, which International Solar Alliance, and where more than 40 African countries are part of it. So solar energy is an important aspect of it. But the most important thing is when you talk of renewable energies, is that uh, how do you develop the storage for the solar and for the renewable energy? Whether it's the how do you run your electric
Batteries.
vehicles, the batteries, how do you develop them? What are the minerals which are needed for them? Most of these minerals are present where?
In
They're
Africa.
present in Africa.
Cobalt,
Yeah,
lithium.
in countries like DRC, which where it's conflict ridden,
Hmm.
where China has invested in a big way. They have invested in a big way, and the countries like in West Africa, countries in North Africa, countries in Southern Africa, so critical minerals which are really important for making a move towards greener future, green transition. They are all present in Africa, so Africa plays an important role, and therefore. If you're looking at the world's future in green transition, Africa,
Is the
they
place.
have to partner with African countries. They cannot do without partnering with African countries. So that's why you find that a number of countries are now uh, engaging with Africa. Countries like Korea, which were not really doing that in a big way, had a summit with Africa. UAE had a summit with Africa. Turkey's had a summit with Africa.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, the traditional powers like Europe used to have, Europe Africa summit, but these are new countries which have also shown interest. Japan recently had the TCAD, the partnership summit with the African countries, and similarly, President Biden hosted African countries earlier uh, for a US Africa summit. So, Africa has been in the global limelight for a few years because of the fact that these resources are important for them. But what the African countries want is not just that these external partners just take these minerals away. They want them to help in industrializing these countries.
What about West Asia? What does West Asia? You should have to think about this region which is high in natural resources, and which is going to be an opposing factor for their oil and gas ecosystem
Yeah, so
environment.
so that's why you find that the West African countries, West Asian countries, are also engaging with Africa in a big way. They are partnering with. So UAE is a very important partner. It's emerged as an important partner. Saudi Arabia is also increasing. For the food security, also they are looking at Africa. Because you know that in most of the West Asian countries, they do not have the capacity to develop for agriculture. So
Farmlands, yeah.
so they are importing. So they are looking at imports, dedicated imports from the African
And
countries.
Africa has a dedicated seed engineering as well, which India had collaborated earlier this
Yeah, so
month itself.
Africa has the largest uncultivated arable land available. So Africa can become the food bowl for the entire world.
And India recognizes it. And
India
we
recognizes
recently
it.
had like a seed forum where India industry and the African industry came together to recognize different seeds which could, be useful in the future.
Yeah, for a partnership in co-developing seeds and
Happened in
business.
Hyderabad, if I'm not
That
wrong.
happened in Hyderabad. This is very recently. So India is engaging with Africa in agriculture, in health, in developing digital infrastructure. India is the first one of the countries which has developed digital infrastructure. It began with
UPI.
Aadhaar developing the digital identity card. Then it went to UPI, which unified payments interface, which through which India has done wonders in terms of transferring, you know, within our country. It has really, really changed the whole ecosystem of payments with a country with a person in a small village can also transfer to anywhere in India or so that's a system which is really attractive to the African countries, and India has been engaging with a number of African countries to transfer this payment system.
It's good to hear that the future of India-Africa relations is very positive, and it's gonna be hopeful for betterment of both the regions, the South-South collaboration. And you have written a book on it as well. If you just want to tell the audience, why should someone pick this book and read this?
This book is on which talks about both the security and the development potentials of India and Africa partnership, and I think it is very important that you understand that for India, Africa is a partner which is for life. A partner or a family member for whom India wants to do whatever they are interested in. For us, the African priorities are paramount, and this book tells you all about that. That what is India's cooperation happening in the field of, say, uh, climate change, or what is India's partnership with Africa on in development issues, what is India's partnership with Africa in areas multilateral issues like UN and UN peacekeeping. So those are some of the issues which are being discussed in this book, and I'm sure this would give you perspective on how India's engagement with Africa is moving on.
I'm sure the audience would also love to know your interest in Africa and where did it all arise from.
Yeah, my interest in Africa began about 3 decades back. I was looking at the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa. That's when my interest in African countries began. So that, but now it's moved on from South Africa to looking at India-Africa relations in a larger perspective, looking at the security situation in various countries in Africa. I've also traveled to several African countries and had the opportunity to meet the researchers from various African countries in my dialogues with them or interact with them in various forums. So it has been an interesting journey where I've understood till now that how important Africa is globally and how much India can learn for it. I think it is a partnership. There are a lot of things in Africa which the Indians do not know about. And I always consider myself to be a student of African studies. Uh, there's a lot more which I can learn about Africa, and I'm sure by reading my book you will get a glimpse of that. But I would like to continue with my passion for African studies and hope to engage with you in similar discussions in future.
That'd be great, ma'am. We always love to have conversation with you. Even this one was quite insightful for me. A lot of learnings during the day. Our conversation off camera learned a lot on the subject of Africa. Unfortunately, we don't speak a lot about the region, but it is a very important region for India, and it is ever evolving as well. Thank you so much for spending the time, ma'am. It's been a pleasure having a conversation. I'm sure audience had a lot of takeaways.
Thank you for inviting me.
If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.